Chosen one, this 15th of July is not arriving as a polite reminder. It is arriving like a door that finally stops trembling in its frame and stands open for you. You have carried a season that asked more of your heart than your words could explain, and what looked like ordinary days was often the place where your endurance was being measured. The final stretch was harder than you expected, because it touched the places where you had almost learned to hide your fatigue, your prayers, and your questions. Yet even now, beneath the noise of waiting, something in you knows that the ground has changed and that you are not standing where you stood before. This message is for the part of you that kept moving when the inner strength felt thin and the answers stayed quiet. It is also for the part of you that wondered whether the delay meant denial, because that misunderstanding has followed you longer than it should have. Today, the atmosphere says otherwise. Today, the weight is shifting. You may remember a room in your house where you sat with your phone in your hand, staring at the same screen more than once, as if the right message might appear by mercy alone. You may remember the kitchen light in the late hour, the sink still full, the chair slightly pushed back, and your shoulders carrying the day, even after your body had tried to rest. In that ordinary place, the silence felt larger than the furniture, and your chest tightened every time you thought about what had not yet changed. You were not imagining the strain. You were living inside it. And because it was domestic and quiet, it was easy for others to overlook what was happening in you. But heaven does not overlook what the eye dismisses. The unseen groan of your faith was heard. The invisible effort was counted. The ache that did not become a speech still mattered. There were mornings when you rose and felt that first heaviness in your body before you even reached for the light switch, as if your bones already knew the day would ask something costly from you. Your hands moved, your face adjusted, your tasks continued, but inside you there was a sentence you never said aloud. I am tired of being strong without witness. That sentence settled in your throat and made everything feel narrower for a while. Even so, you kept showing up at work. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuzazara readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. In the car, at the table, in the hallway where no one saw the pause between your breath and your next step. This is where the truth matters. What wore you down was not only pressure, it was the feeling that the season might never answer you back. Yet the Lord has a way of meeting endurance where it is least celebrated. He sees the tired obedience that nobody applauds. He also knows how to turn that hidden strain into a threshold instead of a grave. When the scriptures speak of the Lord remembering Joseph or of the wilderness leading into promise, they are not speaking only about distant history. They are speaking about the kind of private testing that meets you in an ordinary life. The pattern is not cruel, even when it is hard to recognize. It may be that what you call delay was actually the slow work of protection, because some doors open too early and leave a bruise where wisdom wanted formation. The old interpretation says nothing is happening, but the truer reading is something is being prepared beyond your sight. That tension is real, because your body feels the weight before your mind can name it. Your shoulders remember it. Your sleep remembers it. Your heart remembers every almost, every nearly, every not yet. Still, the season is not empty. It is crowded with hidden meaning. You have been living in a place where the outward pace and the inward pace did not match, and that mismatch made you doubt yourself more than once. Yet a mismatch is not a mistake. It can be a sign that the inside of you is moving into a different measure, one that cannot be rushed by pressure or explained by comparison. In the next few moments, listen closely for the sentence beneath the sentence, because that is where recognition begins. What feels like the end of something may be the first proof that the hardest layer has already passed. The line you thought would break you has instead exposed how deeply you were being carried. There is a difference between being finished and being refined. You are not finished, you are being refined, and the proof will become clearer as the story keeps unfolding. At times, the room around you still looks the same, but the air inside the room does not agree with the old fear anymore. You notice it when the old anxiety tries to rise and finds less room than before. You notice it when the usual disappointment arrives and fails to sit as long at your table. You notice it when your breath returns more slowly, as though your spirit already knows that not everything that once oppressed you has permission to remain. This is not fantasy. It is discernment. The long pressure has been teaching your inner life to separate appearance from reality, and that is a sacred skill. You may not call it victory yet, but your body has already started to tell the truth. The shoulders that were braced are loosening. The heart that was clenched is learning a new rhythm, and that shift is not small. What was hardest about this season was not only what happened, it was the way it kept asking you to continue without visible reward. That kind of hidden faith makes a person feel isolated if they believe they must interpret everything alone. But you were never meant to interpret the whole burden by yourself. Some things are only understood after the weight changes. Some things only make sense when the door finally opens and you realize why it could not open sooner. The delay was not the refusal of God, it was the timing of God. That is a difficult difference when you are tired. Yet it is the difference that saves your hope from becoming cynicism. If you receive that difference now, you begin to breathe differently. If you reject it, you keep calling formation a failure. One leads you forward, the other keeps you circling what is already behind you. There are signs that the hardest chapter has reached its edge, and they are quieter than you expected. They do not always arrive with thunder. Sometimes they arrive as peace in a place that used to panic. Sometimes they arrive as the strength to stop checking the same thing again and again. Sometimes they arrive as the absence of the old dread that used to greet the morning before you did. That is why this word is for the one who has been listening with the whole body, not just the ears. If even one of these signs has landed in you, if your chest has loosened at any point while you have stayed with these words, write 888 in the comments. The meaning is simple. Overflow is beginning to answer what was once only strain. Type 888, then come back to me. Do not rush away from the moment that recognized you. Let it settle, because what is real in the spirit becomes steadier when you return to it with attention. You may have been told by your own fears that you needed one more collapse before you could believe this season had changed. But that voice is not the final authority over you. What is being revealed now is that the burden has already started to lose its hold, even if the outer situation is still unfolding. A door can be open before your hand reaches the handle. A sentence can be finished before your tears finish falling. That is how grace often works in the hidden places. It does not always announce itself with noise. It often waits for your willingness to notice, and when you notice, your whole posture begins to adjust. The head lifts a little. The breathing deepens a little. The inner resistance starts to soften. That is how a new season enters without asking permission from the old one. Think of a hallway in your home late at night, when the light is low and every sound feels louder than it should. In that hallway, you have walked past the same walls many times, but tonight the silence feels less threatening and more like a threshold. That is what is happening inside you. The old room of fear is not gone from memory, yet it no longer owns the hallway. Your body knows the difference before your language does. Your feet slow, then steady. Your throat unclenches. Your mind, which once ran ahead of the truth, begins to stand still long enough to hear it. The season is teaching you to recognize passage. It is teaching you that not every closed feeling is a closed future. Some are only the last echoes of a burden being lifted. When the pressure finally begins to ease, a strange thing happens. You remember how much energy it took just to endure. You realize how many prayers were really breaths, how many breaths were really survival, and how many survival days were really hidden obedience. That memory should not shame you, it should honor you. The path did not ask you to be theatrical. It asked you to remain. Remaining became a kind of faith, remaining in the car before you started the engine, remaining in the chair after the news, remaining in the kitchen after everyone else went to sleep. Those small remains are not small to heaven. They are evidence. They show that the hard phase did not erase you, it trained you, and now the training is giving way to movement. Take a breath with me, because the recognition itself is part of the sealing. If the image I have been walking with you through has landed in a place you cannot fully explain, write these words in the comments. Eu vejo isso. Let the recognition become visible in your own record. It is not a performance, it is agreement. Type eu vejo isso, then come back to me. Your return matters because the truth is not meant to flash and vanish. It is meant to stay long enough to become part of how you stand. What you have seen in the spirit is beginning to ask for a place in your everyday life, and that place is not distant. There is a kind of tired that comes from carrying a promise too long without seeing its shape, and you know that tiredness well. It shows up in the shoulders when you sit too long. It hides in the jaw when you smile for others. It lingers in the eyes when the night ends before your thoughts do. Yet even this tiredness has not been wasted, because it has exposed what is true and what is merely loud. The loud thing is fear. The true thing is that you are still here. The loud thing is the old accusation. The true thing is that the accusation has not been able to name you correctly. You were pressed, but not erased. You were delayed, but not denied. You were quiet, but not absent. The weight has been doing a strange work in you, like a stone that keeps pressure on the seed until the root decides to search lower. At first, that kind of work feels harsh. You only feel the dark soil and the resistance. But later, when green begins to rise, you understand that the pressure was not proof of abandonment. It was the condition that helped life go deeper than it could have gone otherwise. That is why the season around you has felt so uncompromising. It was not simply trying to stop you. It was exposing whether your root would stay in shallow confidence or move into a deeper dependence. The deeper dependence is what remains now. It carries less noise, but more strength. It does not brag. It stands. You may still be tempted to measure this moment by what has not yet happened, but that habit belongs to the old order. The new order asks you to notice what has already changed inside your response. The panic is softer. The inner collapse is less immediate. The first thought no longer gets the final word. That may seem small, but it is not small at all. It is the evidence that the hardest phase has begun to end in you before it ends around you. And when that happens, your life starts to move differently even before circumstances catch up. That is why the next step matters, not because you must force it, but because you must not keep living as though the old pressure still has the same authority. There is a place in your memory where you have almost made peace with disappointment, and I know how familiar that place can become. It can sound responsible. It can even sound wise. But a peace built on lowered expectation is not the peace being offered to you now. The peace being offered now is sturdier than resignation. It is the peace that arrives after the struggle, not the peace that pretends the struggle never existed. That difference changes how you move through a room. It changes how you read a delay. It changes how you answer the next hard thought that tries to revisit you. You do not have to host every old fear just because it knows your name. You can let it stand outside the door. You can answer from a different house now. Some days the proof of change is found in what no longer exhausts you as quickly. A message that would have shaken you now passes through with less violence. A memory that once crushed you now only stings and then releases. A silence that used to feel like punishment now feels like space. These are not accidental developments. They are signs that the inner ground has shifted. You are not imagining the quieting. You are not inventing the relief. You are witnessing the transition from survival to steadiness. That transition is fragile at first, and it deserves tenderness. It also deserves honesty, because if you keep naming it as the old battle, you will keep re-entering a war that has already begun to loosen. A turning point often arrives by invitation rather than force, and that is why obedience looks gentler than fear expects. You do not need to chase the next stage as if it were running from you. You need to stand where truth has already met you and let the next step present itself. This is where discernment becomes practical. You notice which conversations drain you. You notice which habits keep reopening what should have been healed by now. You notice which parts of your old identity still try to speak first. Then you choose differently, not because you are trying to impress anyone, but because you can feel the cost of returning to what has already ended. The season is teaching you stewardship over your own soul. That is part of the blessing, even when it feels demanding. Sit with that for a moment, because the movement has already begun. If the image of that hallway, that threshold, or that loosening weight has landed where words are not enough, write the words "I am ready" in the comments. Let the middle phrase become a quiet witness that you recognize the opening. Write "I am ready," then come back to me. Your return is the bridge between recognition and participation. What you acknowledge in writing becomes harder for fear to erase. What you write in agreement becomes a marker in the story you are living, and the story is moving forward, whether the old pressure likes it or not. There is still a part of you that wants certainty before surrender, but life rarely gives that order. It gives you enough light for the next faithful step. It gives you a breath before the next sentence. It gives you a little more strength after you decide not to turn back. That is why the old demand for total control is losing power over you. You are learning to move with partial sight and full trust. That is not weakness. It is maturity. It is what happens when the soul stops demanding proof from every moment and starts recognizing the pattern of care that has carried it this far. The pattern has not been random. The pattern has been faithful. And faithful patterns do not waste pain. Now the season that once felt like a locked room is beginning to feel more like a corridor with light at the end. You can see enough to know that the walls are not closing in anymore. You can feel enough to know that the air is changing. You can remember enough to respect how hard it was without giving the hard season the final sentence. That is the turning point. The final sentence belongs to God, not to the wound. The final sentence belongs to the one who knows how to finish what was only ever allowed to feel unfinished for a time. Receive that slowly. It does not need to be forced. It only needs to be trusted. There are moments when even a small shift in your breathing reveals a larger shift in your life, and this is one of them. You inhale and realize the chest is not as tight. You exhale and realize the old resistance is not as loud. The body often speaks before the mind agrees. That is why this kind of change can feel so subtle at first and so undeniable later. What was once a battlefield becomes a place of passing through. What was once a burden becomes a witness. What was once constant tension becomes a quieter alertness, the kind that knows the danger is not driving the story anymore. That is a holy change, because it means you are no longer speaking only from the wound. Let your like be your amen without words, because what is being named here does not need applause to be true. If something in this message has confirmed what your spirit already knew, leave your like as that quiet agreement, not as a metric, as a gesture that says, yes, this is the part where the truth met me. Then come back to me, because the response is part of the rhythm and not the end of it. You are not clicking into emptiness. You are answering a recognition, and recognition is the kind of beginning that often hides inside a simple act. There is someone in your life who just came to mind while these words were unfolding, someone who has been working hard and feeling unseen, or someone whose smile hides a private tiredness no one else has named. Perhaps it is someone who has carried strength for everyone else while quietly losing strength in private. Perhaps it is someone whose silence has become heavier than speech. That person is not random to this moment. If they came to mind, they may be part of the same mercy that brought this message to you. Send this to them, not as a recommendation, as delivery, as appointment, as care that arrives on time for a heart that needed to hear it too. You do not need to over-explain the instinct that rose in you just now. Sometimes the Spirit highlights a face so that obedience becomes simpler than delay. When someone comes to mind with unusual clarity, it is often because the word that touched you is also meant to meet them in their own hidden place. Share it with them and let the message travel where you cannot travel in person. There is a kind of compassion that moves through a simple forward step, and that step can become a bridge from your relief to their awakening. That is how one witness becomes many without losing its sincerity. That is how care multiplies without becoming performance, and that is how the story continues to widen. Now there is a stronger seal waiting, and it does not come by force, it comes by agreement. Before this closes, write these words in the comments: Eu sou o escolhido. Do not treat it like a slogan. Treat it like a confirmation of identity being restored into place. The words matter because they return your voice to the truth that was already speaking over you. Type Eu sou o escolhido, then come back to me. Let the declaration rest where your old doubt used to sit. Let it replace the old name that suffering tried to assign you. You are not writing the words to create the reality. You are writing them because the reality is already pressing toward expression. That is why the declaration belongs here, near the end, after the signs, after the recognition, after the shared witness. Identity settles more deeply when it is spoken at the point where endurance has already been tested. It becomes less theoretical, it becomes embodied. And embodied truth is harder to shake. The season that tried to blur you is now helping you become clearer. The season that tried to silence you is now teaching you how to speak from the right center. This is the moment where everything gathered in the earlier paragraphs begins to converge into a single inward clarity. The hallway image, the kitchen silence, the phone in your hand, the tired shoulders, the loosened breath, the face that came to mind, the words you typed, all of it points in one direction. You are being brought back to yourself under the hand of God, not to an old self built on proving, but to the self that can stand without begging for permission to exist. That self is not loud, it is steady. It knows how to wait without collapsing and how to move without panic. That is the shape of maturity now. The hardest phase has not been meaningless, and it has not been endless. It has been a furnace with a boundary. It has been a storm with a horizon. It has been a road that felt longer than it was because you were carrying both the burden and the question at the same time. But the boundary is here. The horizon is showing. The road is changing under your feet. You may still remember the ache, but the ache no longer gets to define the map. You are learning to read the map by promise instead of by pain. That is a new way of walking, and it is worthy of your trust. So keep your inner posture open, because openness is not naivety when it is rooted in discernment. Keep your hands loose, because clenched hands cannot receive well. Keep your breath steady, because steadiness is how the body agrees with the soul. Keep your attention on what is being revealed, not only on what is being removed. Something is leaving, something is arriving. Both movements matter, and both are under the same faithful hand. What was once only survival is now becoming testimony, and testimony has a way of returning strength to the one who speaks it. I bless you with a peace that does not collapse when the room stays quiet a little longer. I bless you with discernment that knows the difference between delay and denial. I bless you with a heart that can recognize the opening when it arrives without fanfare. I bless you with strength that does not need to shout in order to stand. I bless you with patience that is not passive but prepared. I bless you with the courage to walk through what is ending without carrying it into the next room. You were not abandoned. You were being formed. You were not forgotten. You were being prepared. You were not late. You were being led. You are not under the old measure anymore. You are under a new mercy now. And what has been sealed in you will not be undone by the memory of the struggle. Receive this as a collective turning for all who have been waiting in silence, all who have been carrying more than they could explain, all who are now sensing that the hard season has reached its edge. The door is open. The weight is lifting. The story is not finished, but the darkest sentence has already lost its authority. You are being returned to the place where peace and truth can stand together. You are being gathered into a steadier light. You are being called by a name that pain could not erase. You are being held by a mercy that does not fail. You are being set in motion with a quiet strength that will carry farther than fear expected. You are chosen, you are kept, you are being confirmed, and no old voice. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you. And strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.